Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about an octopus, an octopi octopus. Well, just one. We're just going to work on one, and this is a really fun shape to stitch. An octopus typically has sort of a roundish shaped head and then 8 tentacles that curve and twirl around. As it turns out, what we call the octopus tentacles are apparently not actually tentacles, they're arms. And often they're drawn with two big eyes on their head and little suction cups on the bottoms of their tentacles or arms or whatever you want to call them. So let's go with that shape for our octopus. Now, I really want to do a giant octopus in this area here. Just a huge space. Like those shapes that are on my cloth really make me feel like an octopus, but somehow I haven't quite been able to bring myself to do that. So I'm going to settle for a tiny little stitched octopus, and I'm not even using a base fabric. I'm just stitching right onto my background cloth, and I'm going to use chain stitch because I think it gives a nicely shaped stitched line that lends itself really well to those nice curved lines of the octopus legs. So I'm starting here at the bottom of one of the legs, one of the outside legs, and I'm going to stitch up towards the body, and I'm using a reverse chain stitch. So instead of starting at the point, to get started, I made that little securing stitch, and then I moved along the line and looped my thread through that securing stitch, and that creates the first chain stitch, and then you move up along the line. And why did I do that? I did that because I wanted the very tip to be a point rather than a curve. I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense. That's just the way that I did it. So that I work my way up and around. I'm tracing with my stitches, basically drawing a line with my stitches around the shape of the octopus head. As I move around the octopus head, I'm going to then head down in the other direction and create the other leg. And these two legs, the outside legs, are going to be spread out from the octopus body. My scroll is getting a little bit crowded with all kinds of things, but I like it. I'm really enjoying the way it's looking. And then once that second leg is finished, I'll move over towards the body, and I'm going to start filling in the body area with more chain stitches. but I'm going to leave some space for the eyes. So I'll do some stitches around the area that I want to reserve for the eyes so that I remember to not fill that that space in. And because my background fabric is black, I don't really need to do a lot to fill in the eyes. I can just leave it black, or I could add some dark colored stitches in there to give the impression of eyes if I don't think that they're showing up well enough after I finish all my stitches. I'm going to use a mixture of chain stitch, back stitch, and stem stitch to fill in these areas. And depends on how thick I want the line to be. If I want it to be quite bulky, then I'll use chain stitch. If I want it to be narrower, if there's just a little tiny little gap that I need to fill in, I'll use another stitch just to fill in that area. So now, this is not, again, not fast, but I'm just going to take my time and enjoy the process and fill in the head of my octopus here, just with lots and lots of stitches. Some people would call this satin stitch, but the way that I do it doesn't look very satiny. I'm just going back and forth, filling in the area, adding more stitches, until all you can see is my pink thread. Now, why did I decide that my octopus should be pink? I have no idea. It was just the thread that happened to be sitting there that I felt would contrast well with the background. And octopuses have the ability to change the color of their surface, their skin, to blend in with the background against whatever they're sitting against. So you can choose pretty much whatever color you like. Maybe not, I don't know, maybe not purple. I don't know how well they do with really unnatural colors, but this is a fantasy piece and my octopus can be whatever color I want it to be. So if I want a bright pink octopus, I'm going to have a bright pink octopus. I'm just back and forth. I'm doing a lot of just straight stitches just because they're easier to control, and just fill in that area until it's completely covered with the pink thread. And then when I'd filled in the head, I went back down to the bottom and created the rest of the legs, making sure that they were spread out enough that they didn't look like a giant blob, so leaving space between them and making sure that they curl. And if you've watched if you've been watching my videos on the public YouTube channel, you may have seen that I use this chain stitch to create words and letters. And this is pretty much the same way, the same idea. You know, you're just creating a line with the chain stitch, a curved line with the chain stitch. And I've got all my legs coming out off my octopus, and they don't all have to be coming out of the bottom. Some of them can be coming out of the sides because some of the legs will be sort of reaching out behind your octopus as well. So if you don't have space for all 8 legs at the bottom, and who says you have to do all 8 legs? Maybe you can't see them all. Maybe the way that your octopus is positioned, you can't really see them all. And my octopus is really quite tiny, and that's why I felt like I could get away with just doing this in stitch. But if you were making a bigger octopus and you were able to cut out the shape of your octopus from a piece of cloth, you could certainly do it the same way that we did the fish, using a piece of cloth for your base for the base of your octopus and then adding the stitching around it. But I thought that this was a nice, just a different way to do this, just with stitch without any cloth underneath, just embroidery. And it switches things up a little bit to give a different effect. And I'll keep going like this until I have all my legs, as many legs as I decided this octopus should have, filled in there. And then when my octopus is pretty much complete, and you know, this octopus is so tiny that I'm probably not even going to bother trying to put in the little suckers on the bottom, but I am going to go back in with a slightly contrasting lighter color of cloth of thread, and just put some highlights along the legs, along one side of the legs, arms, whatever those tentacles, whatever those things are, and here and there on the body, just to give it a little bit of variation so that the color's not quite so flat. It's nice to add intentional highlights by varying the color off the thread a little bit. I'm using a light pale peach to contrast slightly. Not, yeah, I don't want it to necessarily be a completely different color, although you could definitely experiment with that. And that's pretty much it. There's my little octopus there. I think it's really sweet. I also pretty much the same way created these two little squids. And really the only difference between the way that I made the octopus and the way that I made the squid is that I made the squid slightly smaller with a kind of pointy, narrower top part. And then the tentacles, or legs in this case, are straighter rather than being curvy. And apparently squid also do have tentacles, and some of them even have just one big bulbous eye. But if you wanted to give a different shape a try, you could certainly do that. And you could also maybe try doing chain stitch shaped starfish. Give that a try as well. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and next month we're going to move on and do some underwater aquatic plants. See you again soon. Have fun stitching.